we are just waiting for Dr. Madhuri Bihari. She will be live any point of time. So let me formally start this webinar on stroke and mental health. So to give you a brief background as to why and where we are and how we started, we represent an alliance called Stroke Support Alliance. This is basically an alliance which is a platform to bring together stroke survivors, their caregivers, healthcare providers, and others who are interested in the arena to first to increase the level of awareness in the society about stroke, to see what kind of issues which are being faced by stroke survivors, what kind of support they would require, what kind of gap exists in the healthcare delivery system, and what are their wants and needs, so that these can be collected in one platform and then taken on to the policymakers to in order to strengthen the already existing services and enhance them further, so that issues which are directly relevant to the stroke survivors can be improved, and there is a better healthcare system which caters to the actual needs of the stroke survivors. So today in this webinar, I just want to give you a brief background as to why from stroke rehabilitation and other topic, we actually came to mental health and stroke. While interacting with different stroke survivors and seeing the discussions with them, sometimes on a one-to-one basis and sometimes in a group, we saw that there is actual and topic which is not taken up, which is kept somewhere in the sideline. Although every people knows that that is something which is very crucial in the stroke recovery and rehabilitation process, and that is mental health. And that is something which even the stroke survivors don't acknowledge at one point of time, because there's a denial. They suffer from anxiety attack. They may some may become sad, have wild mood swings. Some may go into deep depression. But sometimes when we interact, it doesn't come about. So we had been trying to involve experts in this field, so that a brief feedback can be provided, an interactive platform can be provided where the premier healthcare experts can provide them a feedback as to how mental health is related to stroke. And today we have two distinguished panelists with us. Uh, Dr. Madhuri Bihari, she's a well-known neurologist. She has an experience of over 34 years. She has been in the government sectors for decades. In fact, she has trained a wide cadre of neurologists throughout India. And in fact, I believe she has been also one of the teachers of Professor Nand Kumar, I believe. And she has been very active in not only in the medical field, but also in the social sector. She has been actively involved in founding many organizations related to movement disorder, to Parkinson disease, and she is very passionate about stroke. There are various reasons to that, which I will come back later. And thus, when we requested her to be part of this webinar, she has kindly agreed to be a part of it in order to provide input of a neurologist, and later on also the views of a stroke survivor. And our second panelist today is Professor Nand Kumar. He's an expert in mental health. He is associated with AIMS. He is specialization in neurobiology and neuromodulation in mental health. He has been pioneer in starting the brain stimulation clinic out there. He has in also starting the Advanced Center for Research and Excellence in mental health and neuromodulation. And he has also initiated a project called Mute, where he is bringing youngsters together to understand the linkage between their body and mental health. Welcome, Dr. Nand Kumar. And to start this, I will request Dr. Madhuri Bihari to kindly present her talk. Dr. Madhuri Bihari, it's over to you. Ma'am, can you hear me, ma'am? Hello.
Ma'am, good evening. I think some issue with the connection.
Yeah, I believe, Dr. Nathkumar, there is an issue with the connection. So, if you don't mind, maybe we can start with your session in the beginning and then maybe go on to session of ma'am, because I think she's facing some issues out, technical issues out there.
Certainly, yes, we can do that. No. Uh, so, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me for this talk. Stroke and mental health is very, very important area. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, yeah. So please.
Thank you very much. The stroke and mental health is very, very important area. In fact, no, they are extremely connected because if you look at the brain, the stroke involves the brain. What happens in the stroke that Madam could have conveyed in much better way. The blood supply of the some particular part of the brain gets affected, and that is what we call ischemic stroke, or there is a hyperperfusion of some part of the brain. That is a overflow of the blood, hemorrhagic stroke. So both our feeling, our emotions, our thought process that depends upon the brain, and our motor movement also. No, like when we talk, when we walk, when we run, that also depends upon the brain. So brain is the organ that controls almost everything in our body, the thought process, perhaps no. And what we as a psychiatrist, what we say, mind. I'm not talking about a spiritual mind. Mind is a basically functional component of the brain. So, say for example, the cognition, the processing of the information that happens in the brain. This is the function of the brain. So, the stroke can affect any area of the brain. Say for example, the area in front of the brain, area behind the brain, the left side, right side of the brain, little deeper into the brain. And we should be aware that our mental function also depends upon certain area of the brain. Say, for example, if you look at this small uh, picture, you can see that the frontal part of the brain that is in the front, in fact, that is basically responsible for intellect, and that also play a role in the self-control. That also help us for the inhibition. Suppose if we are going somewhere, then in some social situation, we don't project some sort, some negative behavior. We are able to control our thought process. That is inhibition. That also regulates the emotion. Then some part of the brain that controls voluntary eye movement. Say, like back of the brain, if you can look into this picture, it controls the basically vision, and it processes the information that comes to the eyes, and then it, it tells us that what the picture is. So memory is uh, responsible for this functioning of the side of the brain, what we call temporal. So we have multiple parts of the brain that controls our emotion, thought process, our speech, our vision, our memory. And if there is a stroke in one part of the brain that is responsible for some those particular kind of function, then those mental function will be affected. Say, for example, if the frontal part of the brain is affected, then the self-control will not be there. If that part of the brain that process the language comprehension that is involved, then they are not able to speak in the stroke. If the auditory part, no, the ear beneath the ear, that cortical part of the brain, if that is affected by the stroke, so we have difficulty perhaps listening, perhaps, or we may develop hallucination. That is a mental health, mental illness. So, lot of mental thing that function that depends upon the brain function. So we should be aware that anything that happens, any part of the brain that gets damaged or that gets altered functioning in the stroke, it can result into some mental alterations. So why it is important to understand, that Or NPD means no, the mental health problem, neuropsychiatric disorder, what we call NPD. So stroke worsen the outcome, no, of mental illness also, and mental health problem in the stroke that worsens the outcome of the stroke. Why I will tell you. Because suppose that part of the brain which controls the emotion, if it is getting involved in the stroke, so that may lead to the depression. In depression, what happens? You don't feel like taking medication. You lose basically, the confidence. You don't have faith. You don't have the inner self-esteem energy. Ma'am, good evening. Energy. No, I think she just appeared. So many patients of the who survive the stroke, they suffer from mental and cognitive impairment because this function is so integrated. Now, it is important for the patient plus for doctors also, because lot of doctors are also not well aware, about how to diagnose mental health problems. Say, for example, I will give you one example. Like after the stroke, patient develops lot of worry, lot of tension, and lot of worry about the future also, about the uh, his or her own outcome, how the person is going to improve in the future. And these worries are genuine worries, but at times it becomes over worry. And the family member or caregiver gets affected by that. And they get also irritated. But they are not aware that this is the anxiety or this is the depression that is affecting the person who are having the stroke. So that creates a lot of conflict between the caregivers and the stroke person. And that affects the outcome. Because once you are low, once you are depressed, you will not take care of yourself. You will not go for also physiotherapy. You will not take the medication properly. So we need to understand that mental health problems are very common problems that we are not aware of, so we ignore it. What we see, that common mental health problems are depression, anxiety disorder, and there is something called what we call post-traumatic stress disorder and psychosis. These are common problems that happens. I will just tell you very, very briefly what happens in this problem, so that once it happened to someone, you can at least know, you can be aware, or you can help the doctor to diagnose the problem, and that can be also treated very well with the help of medicine or other non-medical intervention. Like for depression, what happens? No, there is a myth that depression happens just after the stroke. Depression develops after the stroke. No, depression can develop anytime from the 1 month immediately after the stroke, from 1 month to 18 months. So the person is supposed doing well, recovering well with the stroke, but maybe at the 3 months, 4 months, the person developed depression. Then the person is not able to understand why this is happening. In depression, the person develops low mood, there's a very low self-esteem, the confidence to do the even the usual thing that also goes down. There is either lot of sleep, or the no, the person is not able to sleep. Uh, the person becomes very sensitive. The person who develops a stroke very sensitive to the small issue, and they cry on very trivial issue. No, that is against their usual nature. And when the depression becomes severe, we may feel very worthless, and we may feel that life is not worth living. And at times, no, we leave the hope. We drop the hope that we can be better. So if these symptoms are there and this lasts for at least 2 to 3 weeks, at least 2 weeks, then we can say the person is having depression. And it should be then properly treated, so that the stroke recovery can become better. So if you observe that anyone who is having this stroke, or no, maybe within 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, and they are developing this kind of symptoms, and there is no apparent reason for that, then one should suspect that the person is having depression, and doctor should be conveyed that these symptoms are there, and the proper treatment can be initiated. Okay. So how to know diagnose that? I think doctors know how to diagnose that, and they use different kind of rating instrument, like hospital anxiety and depression scale, Hamilton depression scale, something like what we call big depression inventory. It is available in the internet. We can use that. We can use that inventory our uh, we can use that, just get print out from the internet, and you can read it. You can self-administer the scale. You can just read. You can see the score. It may help you to understand whether the depression is developed or not, or it is developing or not. So it's easy to diagnose depression clinically also, and with the help of these rating instrument also. At times, unless you give the history to the doctor, the doctor will not able to diagnose properly. Because this depression, what happens in a stroke, is little different than what happens in other medical conditions. Because in a stroke, there is difficulty in difficulty in communicating with doctors, difficulty in expressing to the doctors, either in written way or in the no, the verbal way. There is difficulty in reading also, because that part of the brain is involved, which involves in reading, or which involves in writing, and which involves in processing the information. So the patient won't be able to say very clearly that about his mood. So the doctor's knowledge, clinical experience is important, and you can help the doctors by conveying, by saying the right kind of information, uh, what the patient is having, in fact, in terms of the symptoms. It is very easy to manage depression with the help of medication. Only thing that medication has to be chosen carefully. Like some medication may increase the blood pressure, those should be avoided. Some medication are very, very safe. There is very minimal kind of side effect. And there is a myth, no, that myth is that the antidepressant medications are sedative medication. No, this is entirely uh, false information. The current antidepressant medication, lot of medications are there. They don't induce sleep. They are not sedative medication. In fact, they causes at times insomnia also. So the doctors understand what medication to be chosen so that the depression can be lifted. And once it is lifted, perhaps it will help in good outcome. There are certain techniques that can activate the damaged area of the brain, what we call neuromodulation technique, that we have been using since last 8 to 10 years. It's a new treatment, and that also affect the recovery in a positive way. The recovery is faster, and the mental health problem also can be addressed. So these are new thing that the doctor can tell you in better, in fact, that we are using. Another common problem is anxiety disorder. So what happened in anxiety? No, in anxiety, basically there is a feeling of uneasiness. There's a lot of worry, excessive worry, and these worry lasts for a long time. No, it is not usual worry that comes and goes. This is a persistent kind of worries about trivial issues. And anxiety also manifests in some physical symptoms like the tense muscles, the dizziness. There could be numbness or tingling of the hand or feet. There could be the headache. There could be chronic muscle or joint pain. Because in anxiety, what happens? There is increased tone of autonomic nervous system, sympathetic tone, and that leads to a lot of physical symptoms. So at times we get the patient also, the caregiver also, and the doctor also get basically little confused that these symptoms are because of anxiety or because of the symptom of the stroke. In fact, not anxiety. So the caregiver can help the doctors to understand by giving the right kind of information about patient's uneasiness, excessive worry, so that we can understand that what kind of diagnosis to be there, and we can help the patient. It is easy to diagnose the anxiety with history that what we have seen, and the doctors can use some rating scale. Anxiety also can be treated very well, in fact, with the drugs, not sedative drugs, but those drugs that can reduce the anxiety. Other intervention to reduce the anxiety is psychological intervention, what we call cognitive behavior therapy. So cognitive behavior therapy is basically changing the cognition. Cognition means the information processing system of the brain. The psychologist can tell you how to manage the worries, the day-to-day worries, or how to manage the some impending things in the future that is worrying you a lot. One of the very effective technique is mind-body intervention, or what we call yoga meditation. Say, for example, if you are just doing the breathing, if you're taking a deep breath, long breath, that activates the vagus nervous system in the body, that is a part of autonomic nervous system, and that relaxes the entire body. So the small these techniques like breathing techniques, yoga, meditation, it can also help a lot in managing the anxiety. uh, Few patients may develop, not a good number, but few patients may develop psychosis. Psychosis means they're away from the reality. And main psychotic symptoms are what we call, like, at times the person start hearing some voices. No one is around the person, but they start hearing some voices and they start responding to those voices. Clinically, it looks like that they are very fearful. The person is fearful with the stroke and they are responding to some situation that they are not aware of. And you can see the patient talking to themselves. So these are the hallucination time patient develop. And mostly if the stroke area affects the temporal lobe of the brain, then the hallucination may develop. At times patient becomes very doubtful, and they develop very false kind of belief, like somebody has done some wrong to them, or somebody has fitted some instrument to harm them. Somebody has done some deliberately dangerous thing to them. So this kind of false belief the patient may develop, that what we call technically a delusion. And of course, at times there is a very hypertonic movement, the motor movement of the person, and there is inappropriate behavior like picking up the bed sheets, irritation, lot of anger, uh, anger without any provocation. But most of these psychotic symptoms are happened in the acute cases of the stroke, severe stroke, unlike anxiety and depression. These also can be treated with the medication very well by the doctors if the patient or caregiver reports this symptom to the doctor. Then at times what happens in the acute stroke or transient ischemic stroke, uh, the patient develop intense anxiety that lasts for a very long time. And in some situations, suppose if somebody has gone to the market or somebody is staying at home alone, and when they develop acute uh, stroke, minor stroke or moderate stroke, then that goes to the no, that trigger the anxiety response, and that leads to post-traumatic stress disorder, that is the PTSD, what we call. In PTSD, the intrusive memory, like suppose if you gone to the market, you fell down because of the stroke, then you will not go to the market or you will not go to the open place because of the fear that no, again a stroke may happen. And there is a hyper arousal. There is a lot of hyperactivation of sensory nervous system, and the person is a lot of no anxiety and jitteriness, and they start avoiding those situations and those places where the stroke first happened. And a lot of negative emotions are there, no, like low self-esteem, low confidence, something like that. That is what we call PTSD. And the thoughts keeps coming in the mind. That's very intrusive thought. This can happen also, but it is it is not a very all the time separate as an entity. What we see that most of things like PTSD, anxiety, depression, and this thing, they they occur together, and we can treat that also, but we have to first understand and diagnose that. So one of the important causes, lot of people ask, can stress cause a stroke? In fact, yes, stress causes a stroke. If you look at that, some data, Sharon Stone, she developed a stroke at the age of 43 years, and she was completely physically fit, but she developed it. And a lot of people attribute that to the huge amount of stress what she was undergoing, because the stress response, if it gets triggered, it affects the entire nervous system also, leading to increased blood pressure and increased cortisol hormone. Uh, Recently, just in this month only, on the World Stroke Day 2020, there was a very good article in Indian Express, and what they mentioned that work stress can increase the risk of getting a stroke. And what we have seen, Professor Madhuri Bihari Madam can explain that much better. That lot of younger people are developing a stroke, and I think one of the major cause of that is a stress that is affecting our nervous system, leading to the acute stroke. So these are important thing about the stroke, and stress is a very important factor for the stroke. By minimizing stress also, we can manage stroke in a little better way. Thank you very much.
Uh, Thank you, Professor Nand Kumar. I will request you to stay out there. After Dr. Madhuri finishes her presentation, we'll be coming back to you with the questions which have come from our viewers. Now, over to you, Dr. Madhuri. Ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, ma'am. You are audible.
Yeah,
Ma'am,
thank you. Sorry?
good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, good evening. ये क्या हो गया भाई? Can you see my slide now?
No, no, ma'am. Your screen is yet to be shared.
Okay, I have tried to share my. Can I share now?
Yeah, yeah. Please go ahead.
Can you see me on the slide? This thing.
I can. You are visible, madam, but your screen is not yet shared.
Shall I share my screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is here. Is it come? Has it come?
Not
Oh, ma'am.
yet. No, ma'am. It's not yet come. Ma'am, if there is a technical issue, it doesn't matter, ma'am, because I have been through many of your webinar. So even if you give it a go, that will be more than enough for us. If there is any technical.
No,
Okay, ma'am, your screen is coming, ma'am.
Yeah, now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm so happy it's there. Right, thank you. Thank you very much. And I would like to apologize for waiting for me so long and that I have so much technical problems. I'm not so technical savvy, so please pardon me for that. So today we are going to understand what is stroke. So and this is basically meant for people who don't know much about stroke and those who are not neurologists. So I'm trying to make everybody understand what is stroke in very simple language. So what is stroke? There are basically two types of strokes, as we all know. In one type, what we have is that the blood vessel which supplies the brain gets blocked, and the blockage may be because of several causes, and I'll allude to it later. The other type of hemorrhagic stroke is the one in which a blood vessel ruptures which goes into the brain, ruptures, and there's bleeding inside the brain. And these two types are called respectively the ischemic stroke and the hemorrhagic stroke. Hemorrhagic, in which the blood happens and there's bleeding inside the brain, and the other one in which there's a clot in the blood vessel or there is a blockage in the blood vessel because of some other reason. And these two, both the things prevent the oxygen from reaching the brain. The blood doesn't reach the brain, and so also the oxygen doesn't reach the brain. And hence, because of lack of blood supply, the nerve cells get damaged and they die within few minutes. Stroke is a very common cause of death globally, and it used to be fifth cause of death earlier, several years ago, but now it has become the third cause of death. And so we have to be very careful about it, and we need to know more about it. How do I change? Acha. So as I said, there are two types of stroke. One in which there is a blockage in the artery by cholesterol plaques or the thrombus plaques, and this prevents the blood to flow from inside to the periphery of the brain. And the hemorrhagic type, in which the blood vessel gets ruptured and there's bleeding inside the brain. And there's a third type also, in which a clot dislodges itself from the heart or from the bigger artery nearer the heart, and then it goes into this more peripheral or distal blood vessel and blocks the blood supply of that. You can imagine that there is a pani ka nali, and suppose it gets blocked. So the people beyond that will not get any water supply. Similarly, when the blood vessels get blocked by a thrombus or by a clot, the distal part of the brain doesn't get any blood supply. And this is similar to a water system and this happens in the brain. I want to just show briefly that this is how a CT scan in a person who has infarction look like, and this is the bleeding part. You can see a bleed here in the brain inside, and here because of lack of blood supply, you find that there is, the part of the brain becomes dark, and it is lack of blood supply in this area. So when you have somebody with a stroke, what do we do? We have to identify that the stroke has happened because of presence of signs and symptoms, and what are the early signs and symptoms, because it is very important. If you are at home and somebody in the family gets stroke, it is very important to know what is the early signs and symptoms. And then we must act fast and diagnosis is done. After that, the treatment is, you can give some home remedy at home. And then when at the hospital, doctors give some remedy to the patient. And after that, when the patient gets discharged and gets home, we have already seen that some patients get a lot of depression. So we have to be prepared for taking care of all the problems that the patient gets. So before going further, we must understand how the brain works. As we know, the brain has got two parts, the right part and the left part. And inside the brain, the nerves which come out from, or the fibers which come out from the right side supply the left side of the brain. And when those that come out from the left side supply the right side of the brain. So if there is a damage or a bleeding or a clot on the left side, the right side gets affected, that is paralysis. And when the right side is involved, the left side gets affected. And this is very important because the doctor says, you will say that I have got right side weakness, but the doctor said left side, there is a clot on the left side. You get very nervous and very confused. How is it? So it is very important to understand that left side will control the right side and the right side of the brain will control the left side of the body. So what are the signs and symptoms? These are the major signs and symptoms which are very easy to understand. They can be paralysis on one side of the body. In Hindi, we call it lakwa. So it is very easy to understand. The whole body becomes heavy, not able to move. And if the paralysis occurs on the right side, some people also get difficulty in speech. And speech has two parts. The one part is understanding, the other part is speaking out. So both the parts can be affected. The person may not be able to understand what is being said or may not be able to speak whatever he wants to speak. Sometimes they may just babble some word, ba 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 ba, la 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 la, things like that, and they're not able to say the correct words and whatever they want to feel. At times there may be blurring of vision, there may be double vision, or there may be imbalance. The whole body gets imbalanced, and when they want to walk, they tend to fall on either side. And the walking becomes very haywire, unsteady, and there's no balance. When the stroke involves a smaller part of the brain, as told earlier, especially the temporal lobe, which is present right above the ears of ours, then what we get, confusional state. And this confusional state may also occur in some patients. And before we go to the further part, the WHO has asked people to understand the acronym FAST, F-A-S-T. And what does it stand for? FAST, F stands for facial weakness or facial drooping on one side. Or when you ask the patient to smile, one side will get pulled, the other side will not get pulled. Or there may be problem in the speech. And if you find anybody having these symptoms, one should act fast because time is health of the brain. If you delay, then you have lost the golden time and the patient may not recover as well. This is again what is FAST, drooping of face on one side, sagging of arm. I ask the patient to raise the arms and the one side will sag. So that is another thing which could, or the speech may become slurred. So if you identify these things, you can understand it better and you can act faster and better. But I would like to add that instead of fast, one should be fast. That means you will look at balance, you look at eyes, that there's no blurring of vision, the face is not drooping, there's no weakness in the arms or the legs, or the speech is not, there's no problem in difficulty in speech. And whenever any of these things happen, you must act fast and call the ambulance immediately. Because as I said earlier, the action within the first 3.5 hours, if taken early, then you can completely recover, the patient can completely recover. This is very, very important to understand. Then let's look at this. Who is more likely to get a stroke? What are the risk factors? But before I go into that, I want to tell what are the minor symptoms of stroke that sometimes you may not be able to understand, but you must remember and try and keep them in mind. For example, You might find that the patient, when you go to brush and you find that one mouth side of the mouth, you're not able to do your kulla. Mouth rinsing is very difficult. So the water will come out from one side of the mouth. So that is also important. And then if you speak to them, say namaste, they don't know what, they look around and they seem to be confused. They're looking at the newspaper, they can't read a word out of it. Or they will not be able to find the way to the house or something like that. So all these things are important to know, because different parts of the brain can give rise to different symptoms. Let's come to the risk factors. What are the risk factors? There are basically two main types of risk factors: those that a doctor or you can modify yourself, and those that are such bad things that you cannot modify, nor the doctors can modify it for you. So the modifiable risk factors are basically lifestyle associated. For example, obesity, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, lot of lipid or fat, cholesterol in the body, inactivity, no physical activity, you are always having sedentary activity, or the smokers. All these people have very, very high chances of getting a stroke. Among the heart disease, the ischemic heart disease, as we call it, or the heart attack or minor heart attacks can also give rise to stroke, because they can cause, when the heart attack occurs, there's a part of the heart which is not functioning well. So it doesn't contract. And when it doesn't contract, some blood clots on that. And when it clots, suddenly clots strongly, that clot goes out into the blood vessels and block the brain artery. So one has to be very careful. Other problems like atrial fibrillation, carotid stenosis, alcohol consumption, and unhealthy diet and nutrition. So you must, these are the things which one can modify oneself, or with the help of a doctor. So these things I would like to emphasize much more than anything else. You must be able to identify these risk factors and get help yourself or from somebody else. You can, most of these you can look after yourself, otherwise you have to seek doctor's help. There are some risk factors which are less modifiable, things like migraine, some certain metabolic syndromes in which you have high uric acid, high cholesterol, and so on. If you are using drug abuse, you are a drug abuser, you take injectable drugs, then that can also cause lots of stroke. You are at risk of stroke. Obstructive sleep apnea. This is a newly identified disorder, and it occurs usually in obese people. And in this, the people snore very loudly, and at times there are small pauses in which the person is not breathing at all. And this can lead to thickness of blood. Blood becomes very thick, and then it clots in the body. Then there are other things like homocystinemia, hypercoagulability, elevated pressures, and some inflammation and infections around the throat and neck area. That can also sometimes give. But we can all look after them and modify them. The non-modifiable risk factors for which we can't do much are the genetic factors, our age, because as we know, as we age older, become older, there are more chances of getting strokes. Those children who are born low birth weight, are also more likely to get strokes. And some races and some ethnic groups are more likely to get strokes. And it is shown that as compared to whites and blacks, the blacks are more likely to get strokes. And those in low socioeconomic status, as well as male, are more likely to get stroke. That doesn't mean that females do not get. In females, the hormones which they have before menopause, they are helpful. But after menopause, there's no difference between the two sexes. So we come to stroke prevention. How can we prevent stroke? Up to 80% of strokes are preventable with healthy lifestyle. I think I can't more emphasize this fact that healthy lifestyle is the key to good health, and it also prevents stroke. So one should follow a healthy lifestyle, and these include quit smoking. Smoking is a very important risk factor, and one should always try and stop smoking or taking tobacco in any form. The weight should be healthy. One should not be overweight, and you eat your healthy diet with lots of fresh vegetables, fruits, and fiber in your diet. Exercises are very important. It's not just walking slowly. You have to do very brisk, regular exercises, at least 3 times a week for 30 minutes. One doesn't ask you to do about 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, or every day. It's just 3 times a week and only half an hour every day, all those 3 days. And if you have obstructive sleep apnea, high blood pressure, diabetes, or cholesterol, you should take care of them and seek help from the doctors for that. Okay, now I think I have finished my slides. And when before a stroke happens and the patient is at home, what you can do? You should be first able to identify that this is a stroke by following the FAST. And if you think it is a stroke, you can give 1 tablet of Disprin or aspirin, 75 milligrams. And that should take care of the patient, and make sure that the patient is not very anxious or hyperactive. Just ask them to lay down and make sure that the patient is not dehydrated. If the patient is dehydrated, give them enough of fluids and then transfer them to the nearest hospital as soon as possible. Don't delay in going to small clinics which do not have the know-how or the facility to give the thrombus bursting therapy. Also, it is very important after after giving hydration and therapy, just avoid any anxiety and hassleless in the house and take the hospital to the hospital. And the doctors in the hospital will take care of you and give you all the treatment that is required. And I want to also tell you that after the therapy, what you should do. After the patient has had a stroke, most patients do not know what to do. And they have a very, as Dr. Nandkumar has already alluded to, there's a lot of depression. It's not just depression which occurs afterwards. It can occur immediately also. And being I don't know, having experienced it myself, I think there are 2 types of patients: those who are working and those who are just housewives or not working. People who are not working, in them the depression probably occurs much later. And in those who are working, it occurs earlier. They will say, oh, I will not be the same again. I will not get the same respect again. I will not be able to do the same work again. I will not be a meaningful person in the society again. So that strikes immediately in the beginning. And so you don't know what to do. And sometimes for no reason, you're talking to somebody and the tears roll down. You don't know what's happening to you. And this sometimes happens to many people. Whereas in those people who are not working or working at home and they're retired people and not doing anything, for them, the depression strikes much later. That means after they find that they are left alone, then they have nothing to do. Their arms are painful. You can't move a joint. You can't do a thing. As soon as you move a limb, it starts paining. So then they find that they are not so useful and they feel depressed at that time. There's another thing which happens to some people, because whatever amount of physiotherapy you do, this is the most important thing, and it should be started right in the beginning on day 1. Physiotherapy is something which should be done on day 1 and should be continued as long as one lives, even afterwards. So even after a good physiotherapy, you feel you are okay, you are normal. Everybody thinks you are normal. But what you find is that particular limb is never 100%. It is either 95%, 98% when you think it is normal. So after you work a lot, or even if you don't work, in the evening, you find that there is a lot of tiredness in that particular limb. You feel very tired. You feel pain and aches in that part of the body. And that is one thing which also is a cause of depression in some people. You get a lot of pain and nobody seems to understand that you have pain. Why are you tired? The people will ask you. So that is something which also bothers most patients. Then what happens is that though many people have lack of sleep, there's another thing that many people have excess of sleep. They tend to sleep even during the day, even before the breakfast is served. Even when they are working, they will feel that they are dozing and sleeping away. So these are certain other problems which occur to patients who have had stroke in the past. I think I have nothing more to add. If there's any question, I'll be willing to take them.
Thank you, ma'am. Just with your permission, ma'am, because this will be a very big motivating factors for the stroke survivors who have joined us on this webinar. Dr. Madhuri Bihari had a stroke in the past. And if you see that she is addressing you as a neurologist, so she is a neurologist as well as a stroke survivor. So this is a big sign that if there is a will out there, and if you put in the effort, you can get back, maybe not 100%, but at least recover full enough to resume your previous life, or at least 90% of it. Madam, questions, some of the questions which have been asked, I am addressing few which are directly to you. Is can we measure the extent of damage in the brain after stroke? And any brain mapping technology for that?
Yes, yes, it is very, very possible because we have lots of brain mapping techniques. We have PET scan, we have MRI scan, we have so many types of diffusion scans, and we can know exactly which part of the brain is damaged, which is partially functioning, and which is normal. So we can know that. It is easy, very easy.
And ma'am, another question which was asked, that does the memory comes back fully, or is there is a loss of memory with stroke survivors?
See, if the part of the brain is completely lost or dead, then it is difficult to get the memory back. But if it is partially blocked, with over time and with reinforcement, it can come back. What I said, that it is very important that physiotherapy and therapy for speech, therapy for memory should be started right in the beginning. And as the patients, you know, what people say, "Arey, baad mein kar lenge." Nothing happens baad mein. You have to start right in the beginning. You can't tell, "I'll start teaching my child when the child grows up." You start teaching the child right from the day one the child is born. You tell them, "This is light, this is gray, this is brown, this is thanda, this is garam." Don't you tell them? Just like that, right in the beginning, you have to move the hands, make them more useful. Start zipping, start counting coins, start counting pages. You do that, you will be okay. So is true for memory and language function, speech function. Yeah, thank you for introducing me as a stroke survivor. Yes, I'm a stroke survivor, but you will find that my speech is pretty good. And the reason for that is that, you know, apart from doing speech therapy from the therapist, I started learning classical vocal music. I think that has helped me a lot because they make you produce the same क्या स्वर निकालना है आपको, आ निकालना, सा निकालना तो सा ही निकलना है, प निकालना है तो प ही निकलना चाहिए, ग निकलना है तो ग ही. You can't say this is my g, this is my sir. No, you have to have the right swar. And when you have the right swar and you have music, somewhat little bit music in you, you can speak well. And I have done a lot of yoga, a lot of exercises. I can tell you here that every day, about 6 hours, right in the beginning, I was doing 6 hours of exercises for each muscle of my hand, fingers muscle, hand muscle, wrist muscle, each muscle I was doing. And I was taking 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the evening, 6 hours of exercise every day. People will think that is unimaginable, but you have to do if you want to do what I'm doing now.
Exactly, ma'am, because that was another question which had been asked, that how useful is music therapy for it. So with your case, there is a live example as to how music therapy can actually help a person to recover. Thank you, ma'am. But ma'am, another question which was asked is, at what age did you have it, if you can share that, and the kind of stroke you had?
I had ischemic stroke, and it was when I was 61-year-old. I am now, shall I tell my age?
Up to you, ma'am.
It is about 10 years back that I had it.
So even after 60, if somebody gets the right kind of treatment and put in that effort, it is possible to return back.
And not just vocal music. Vocal music is good for voice, but if you have problem in doing finger movements, you can do tabla or you can do string instruments, whatever. You have to identify what is your problem and do that.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. The next question was to Dr. Nand Kumar. Dr. Nand Kumar, what is the role of the family, the caregivers? What role they can play to deal with mental health issues of a stroke survivor? Hello.
I'm not able to hear.
Yeah, Dr. Nandkumar, can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Nandkumar, I was asking what is the role of the family members in the recovery of a stroke survivor in case he is suffering from, some mental health issues, as you listed out during your talk. How can they help?
Thank you. I think one of the very important kind of no message that we give to the stroke patient or survivor, any patient in fact, like when give the message, it should be a positive message. Positive, negative in the sense, like the way we communicate to the patient, it should be reinforcement positive one. Say for example, ये करोगे तो ठीक हो जाओगे, आप ऐसे करेंगे तो ठीक हो जाएंगे, ये करना होगा. दूसरा है ये करोगे नहीं तो कभी ठीक नहीं होगे. So this is the no kind of message that we have to differentiate. If we give another kind of message, next last one, what I have mentioned, so that is not a challenge. Our intention is good, no, as a caregiver, that we want to encourage the patient, but it doesn't work most of the time. So if you're able to convey the message very straight, that no, you will do it, you will be better. Plus, you have that encouraging yourself, good, you can do for 1.5 hours also. The same thing family should do perhaps, and that is no very positive. In fact, that activates the brain cell because we have two kind of system. No, one is a negative and another is positive balance. So the positive balance has to be perhaps more stimulated, more encouraged. Uh,
But, yeah, please go on.
Hello.
Sir, another question which was asked. Yeah, so another question which was asked is that some people are apprehensive about, the drugs which are provided, telling that they may have some kind of long-term effect. So then they are not very keen on that. What is your view about that?
In fact, the apprehension is not genuine all the time. No, lot of medicines are there. It's a safer medicine, and once we prescribe medicine and we know about that medicine, we are able to educate the patient. These medicines are safe, but medicines require some monitoring. No, there is a common misperception that the doctor prescribe the sedative, or no, these drugs can't be stopped once it started. No, it's not like that. No, if you're able to treat the person and the person is compliant for the medication and the person is symptom free for some specific time, then we can stop the medicine also. They're quite safer. So this is a misperception, what I would say.
So, among even our this survivor group, we have seen that many people suffer from, stress-related issues and anxiety attacks. So, how do you manage those things?
As I mentioned in the beginning, the important part is first to understand that this is anxiety or this is depression. Suppose there is a lot of fatigue, lot of lethargy, crying, there is a low confidence, then you should be able to understand that it is depression. Or if there is a lot of unease, worry, no palpitation, and low self-esteem, then you should understand that it could be the anxiety or something like that, or maybe close to the PTSD. So these things happen. Suppose suppose there is a comorbid depression. No harm in taking antidepressant, but before that, lifestyle modification is very, very, very important. But that is not easy. What Dr. Madam Padre Bihari has mentioned, like you have to put a lot of effort. But most of the people are not able to put effort because they develop depression after that. If you're low, depressed, then there is no harm in taking medication Once the baseline energy and the low mood is lifted up, perhaps you can do much better. So there is no harm in taking help of medication. Then it is always positive, important to get connected to the people. What happens when the person develops a stroke? They get isolated, and the social connectivity is almost lost. So if the family can manage that, no, the social connectivity can be maintained. So that is a very good encouragement, in fact, because mental health depends a lot on the social connectivity. A lot of people develop this no mental health issue because of the COVID pandemic, because of the lockdown and isolation. So the social connect is very, very important. Then other factor is that the physical activity that comes in physiotherapy, that's important. Uh, Brain stimulation by any means, like for example, maybe the music and what is mentioned. It's a music or the sports or whatever you like. In fact, no, your brain should be active in that way. Like I know people, who the bodybuilder, the very good gymnast, they develop a stroke, and the determination is such. What Madam has mentioned that they had no just difficulty in thumb movement. The person was no not able to write with that thumb. All the movement was restored. So we tried some technique like neuromodulation by activating that part of the brain, cortical area of the brain, and he recovered. So a lot of things are there, but important is that they should talk to someone and they get satisfied with the treatment being offered, and they should follow their treatment. I'm not saying that they should follow the doctors whatever they are saying, but they should discuss with doctor and they get satisfied. If it no it is suitable to them, I think one should follow that.
Sir, is there any helpline where people facing this mental health issues after stroke can reach out to?
Uh, I don't think there is no such a specific helpline is not there, but it may be required for us. But in my knowledge, I'm not aware of any such helpline that address the specific issue of the person having the stroke.
Okay. And sir, people from this patient support group, as we had, does that kind of institution after stroke help in their overall recovery process?
It definitely helps because now it again encourages social connectivity. If you are connected socially, connected emotionally to other people, you are having motivation to live, in fact, motivation to do something, motivation to move ahead in the life. So that is very, very positive and it has a positive impact. There is no evidence base for that, no research for that. It is basically no just common sense perhaps. I don't know what Madam can state better.
Yeah, certainly. If you know, like people, and you also come to know how have they tried to come out of their problems, how they have, recovered from depression or anxiety or any such problems. That's important. It is helpful. There was also a question: how long to take blood thinners? So I want to tell that it should be taken lifelong, but you must remember if you go for tooth extraction or you go for any surgery, you must stop it at least a week before that, because otherwise you're going to bleed a lot. So a week, if it is a planned surgery, a week before it, you stop your blood thinner and then restart it after another week.
There is one more question in the chat box. No, the body gets tired, and even though there is no sleep.
Yeah, I did answer those questions.
Ma'am, in our prior to this webinar, we didn't wanted to highlight you as a stroke survivor, but I thought in the webinar when they see the kind of recovery which has taken place, that will be a very big motivating factors. I know you may have more questions which you want to address to both of our speakers, Dr. Nand Kumar and Dr. Madhu Hari. For that, what we have developed is a patient forum. Go to our website, register in the patient forum. Whatever questions which you ask out there will be handled by our panel of experts, including Dr. Nand Kumar and Dr. Madhuri Vihari. Just due to paucity of time, I am going to say thank you to Dr. Nand Kumar for providing your time for this crucial session for our stroke survivors. Thank you, Dr. Madhu Vihari, both as a doctor and a stroke survivor. Your story is very inspiring. And thanks for members of Stroke Support Alliance for joining in and being a part of it. Thank you all.
Thank you
Have
very
a
much.
good day. Have a
Thank you,
good day.
sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.